Hey guys, my name is Mickey. I'm 18 years old. Did you know that everything that we tend to think about karma really works? If you want to do something bad, you can be sure something bad will happen to you. I wanted to get rid of my stepfather. This could hurt my mom, of course, but I didn't mean to do anything more than provoke my stepfather in order to get rid of him. And I succeeded. But what happened was not even close to what I had intended to achieve. Now my stepfather wants to cheat on my mom. With me. And I myself am to blame for this, because I sent him, signals. I never thought that I was a hot guy, but I shouldn't have walked in front of Mr. Drescher wearing nothing but a towel wrapped around my body as if I had just gotten out of the shower. And I had been doing it every now and then. My mother went to work 2 hours earlier than Mr. Drescher, and I tried to capitalize on these 2 hours when we were home alone. I began repeatedly running around, almost naked and wet, pretending that it was accidental and acting like I didn't notice him. I shouldn't have been doing all these things, like, randomly touching him when I served him a glass of soda, giving him embarrassed looks, and other stuff in front of him. I picked up all these things from the internet and TV shows, and damn it, they worked. Although it was very difficult for me to do all this, because I did not like Mr. Drescher at all. And what's more, I'm not gay. I was just pretending. Oh, stop. I have yet to explain at all why I was doing this. Yes, guys, I'm straight. I like girls. Even though, so far, I have not met my one and only. And when I started all this, I thought that Mr. Drescher was also straight. Well, it seemed logical to me because he lived with my mother. They became a couple about 1.5 years ago, and by the time this story happened, he'd been living on in our house for a year already. My mother was a widow, but she didn't mourn for a very long time. She met men, like any single woman who was looking for a mate. She introduced me to some of them. With others, she parted so fast that I didn't even have time to see them. In any case, my mother taught me not to be jealous of her partners ever since I was a kid. So the reason for my dislike of Mr. Drescher had nothing to do with jealousy. Something felt wrong right from the start between Mr. Drescher and me. On the day we met, after only 15 minutes as my mother introduced us to each other, Mr. Drescher made an insulting comment about my appearance and my behavior. At that time, I was fond of anime, had long hair, and wore knee-high boots. Well, that's the way I felt at that time. Mr. Drescher said that I should be more masculine. I got angry in response, and my mother shrugged and remained neutral. She always kept neutral when any conflicts arose between Mr. Drescher and I, and they arose pretty often because he liked to invade my personal space with his strict opinion, and I was terribly angry about this. And I began to think of the ways to make my mom leave Drescher. One day, I realized that my stepfather was homophobic. We watched some series on TV, and he made negative comments about the behavior of one of the characters in his usual strict manner. My mother wanted to clarify what exactly it was that he didn't like. Then, Drescher made a comment about the fact that this character had slept with everyone because he was gay. Mom let this pass, which was rather strange because she has very tolerant views, and her sister is a lesbian. As for me, I wasn't going to give him a free pass, and soon an idea came to mind. I thought that if I said that I was gay, then Mr. Drescher would sooner or later lose his temper and would cross a line with his behavior. I was sure that my mother would not tolerate this and would kick Drescher out, especially since they were not officially married. And later, I would just tell my mom that I was trying to find myself and finally figured out that I still preferred girls. Win-win. I chose an evening when Mr. Drescher came home from work in a terrible mood. I thought it would be the perfect moment to piss him off. I orchestrated my coming out, making sure that everything looked natural and that my mother believed me. I just reminded her of some facts. I still did not have a girlfriend, and there were times when I wore long hair and wore androgynous clothes. I also reminded her that I avoided common locker rooms at school and confessed that it was because I was shy with boys. In general, all this sounded very convincing. Mom reacted to my coming out very calmly. Exactly like Mr. Drescher did. I expected an evil, sarcastic comment from him, or at least an unpleasant moralization, but he calmly listened to me, and then just looked at me rather strangely. Well, my plan didn't work out as easily as I'd expected, but I did not give up. I decided to study different stories on the internet about aggressive homophobes in order to understand how to better provoke Mr. Drescher to express aggression toward me. After reading a lot of sad and even outrageous stories, I realized the best way to provoke a homophobe was to show romantic interest in him. This, of course, was very strange. I had to do it in a certain way so that my mother wouldn't think that her son was trying to take her man away from her. Oh, dear. Well, I started to do everything that I already told you about. I sent signals to Mr. Drescher as if I were a character in an adult movie. He didn't react to them directly, although I saw that he noticed them. This went on for some time until Mr. Drescher unexpectedly invited me to spend a weekend together in his country house. He did it in my mother's presence and made it sound like we could have a great time together, like two men. Like two men. Do you understand? Mom liked this idea because she still held on to hope that Mr. Drescher and I would get along. And she, of course, imagined some kind of fishing or hiking, but I was alarmed. This proposal felt too ambiguous, taking into account everything that I'd been doing before. I wasn't sure whether I should go. To be honest, I was afraid to go out of town with Mr. Drescher. But then, I decided that there was no turning back. I needed some dirt on Mr. Drescher, and no matter what happened in this house, I could surely get what I need there. I worked up all my courage and drove out to the house in the country. Mr. Drescher arrived the day before. And then something shocking happened to me. I went into the house with my smartphone, ready to get some dirt on camera, and saw Mr. Drescher, who cheerfully invited me inside and asked me to sit next to him. Yes, he was dressed. If you were thinking something like that. I was shocked by his actions and by what he told me. Mr. Drescher put his hand on my shoulder and patted it approvingly. He said that he liked my courage, which he, as he said, has always lacked so much. Yes, Mr. Drescher mentioned my perfectly functioning radar and added that I reminded him of his past. It turned out that there was a reason behind the fact that he had never gotten married. And then the truth came out. He also liked guys. Wait, what am I talking about? Not also, I mean, he likes guys. Well, I was just pretending. Frankly, I was almost terrified listening to Drescher's feelings that he was flattered by the attention from a guy like me. And then he said that this was all wrong and that he couldn't. I thought that I should have turned on the recorder. But at the same moment, I realized that this recording would discredit not only Mr. Drescher, but also me personally. I spent the rest of the weekend under tremendous stress. Mr. Drescher, on the contrary, was extremely relaxed and even cheerful. He chatted nonstop and constantly tried to pat me on the back or on the shoulder in a friendly manner. Well, he basically showed me his friendly attitude in every possible way. As a result, at night, I didn't sleep a wink in my sleeping bag and listened to every rustle. Mr. Drescher was sleeping peacefully, but still, I felt incredibly uncomfortable sleeping next to him. I realized that he was attracted to me, but since he was an adult, he was able to keep himself in control. But for how long would he be able to maintain this? When we returned home, my horror continued. Now it was my turn to notice that Mr. Drescher was sending me signals. Now, thank God, Drescher didn't walk in front of me wrapped in a towel, but I felt his attention constantly, and I cursed myself for this stupid plan. Finally, I made up my mind and told Mr. Drescher that I had changed my mind and that I still preferred girls. Mr. Drescher suddenly put his hand on the back of my neck, pulled my face to his, and very seriously advised me to stop lying to myself so I don't live my life the way he did his. I panicked. I only timidly asked him, "What about Mom?" Mr. Drescher made a mysterious face and told me not to get ahead of myself. Okay, after that, I no longer had any doubt that I needed to honestly talk to my mom. In order to make sure that Mr. Drescher wouldn't overhear our conversation, I waited until Mom got back from work and approached her while she was parking the car. I nervously tapped the glass, asking her to let me in. But before I began my story, my mother shocked me with her news. In a couple of days, she was going on a business trip for 3 months. And that meant that I had to spend 3 months alone with Mr. Drescher. So, she added that she was very happy that we were finally getting along. Now, I really started to panic and tried to explain everything, but my mom looked at me as if I had said something stupid, and she didn't pay any more attention to what I was trying to say. Well, Mom left, and I ran away for the weekend to my best friend's house. But I can't live here forever. Sooner or later, I'll have to return home to Mr. Drescher. And I don't even want to think about how this might end.